They never built him a statue. Gary Sprake, the goalkeeper who made Leeds United matter, then vanished from history like he was never there. They didn't remember the clean sheets. They remembered the slip. They remembered the snow at Anfield. They remembered the chant. Careless hands, that's what they sang. As if one throw could erase a decade. As if one slip meant he never stood at all. They laughed louder than they listened, mocked longer than they remembered, and they kept singing long after he was gone. This was the man who gave Leeds their first League Cup, who played every match in their first ever title-winning season, Wales's youngest ever goalkeeper, the first wall behind Don Revie's empire. And by the time they let him go, he had played over 500 matches for the club. But when he spoke the truth about what he saw behind the curtain, they didn't ask questions. They cut the cord. I could have been remembered for trophies, but I was remembered for one mistake. Gary Sprake. No banner, no welcome back, no proper farewell. Even in death, they said less than he deserved. This isn't nostalgia. This is football's correction. Subscribe if you believe silence can be crueler than hate, and that some names weren't forgotten. They were erased, and this time we bring them back. Born April 3rd, 1945, in Swansea, Wales, a rugby town. A working-class family. Not a place where goalkeepers became legends. But in goal, he wasn't just brave, he was different. Too calm, too fast, too young to look that unshaken. He joined Leeds United as a teenager in 1960. Nobody expected a future. He was just a kid with gloves. But in March 1962, when the first team needed a keeper, he was flown in by plane to face Southampton. His debut aged just 16. No nerves, no headlines, just silence. On November 20th, 1963, at just 18 years and 231 days, he became Wales's youngest ever goalkeeper, standing tall against Northern Ireland. No hype, no noise, just saves one after another. He didn't shout, didn't beg for cameras, didn't chase the spotlight. He just stopped shots and walked away. They said he was quiet. They were wrong. He was cold, and that's what made him terrifying. I was thrown in early, but I liked the fire. Gary Sprake. He didn't ask for legacy, he asked for danger, and he found it between the posts. He was there before the trophies, before the parades, before Leeds United became Leeds United. Gary Sprake wasn't part of the team, he was the spine. From 1962 to 1973, he played 508 matches for Leeds United across all competitions. A decade of dominance, forgotten by most, remembered in numbers. No fuss, no flash. He stood behind the line when they were still learning how to fight. He gave them cover while they learned how to bite. In 1964, he helped them win promotion from the second division. In 1965, they reached the FA Cup final. In 1968, they lifted their first ever League Cup. Sprake was unbeatable. No rotation, no drama, just presence. And then came the moment that changed everything. 1968 to 69. The first division title. The one Leeds had never touched. Sprake played every single match of that historic season, 42 games, start to finish. No backup. A few slips, but never the kind that defined him. They called them Revie's men. But he was there before the names mattered. He wasn't loud like Bremner, wasn't brutal like Hunter. He was still, and still was what they needed. He didn't scream at defenders. He fixed their messes without a word. Gary was brilliant, but he wasn't one of the boys. That dressing room had rules. Former Leeds teammate. He didn't fit the myth. He built the results. But the club forgot to mention that when the song replaced his name. He saved them for years, held the line through wars, won them finals, and gave them trophies. The chant didn't come from one mistake alone. There had been others: a poor throw against Liverpool earlier that year, a fumble in the FA Cup semi-final against Chelsea. But Anfield sealed it. But they remembered the throw. December 1967. Anfield. Snow falling. Scoreline tight. Sprake had the ball. Tried to roll it to a teammate. It slipped, it spun, and it landed in his own net. Liverpool 1, Leeds 0. And then the chant, careless hands, carelessly threw it away. They didn't stop singing. Not that day, not that season, Not for the next 40 years. The press replayed it, the fans replayed it, and football locked it in. One slip, one mistake, and everything else was forgotten. No one spoke of the saves that kept them in finals. No one listed the matches he'd won them. No one said he was among the best in England before the song rewrote his name. That was the day Gary Sprake stopped being a goalkeeper and became a punchline. He was never the same after that, not on the pitch, not in the eyes of the crowd. Leeds supporter, 1970s. One moment undid a decade. Not because he failed, but because football loves memory more than mercy. They didn't drop him overnight. They just made space for someone else. By the early 70s, Gary Sprake was still saving games, still sharp, still the man behind the line, but something had shifted. The chants weren't chants anymore. The warmth was gone, and the club quietly began looking past him. David Harvey came in, younger, quieter, more in line with the room. He'd been with the club since 1965, but it wasn't until the early 70s, after the chants and the silence, that he quietly took the shirt. Sprake didn't fight it. He saw it for what it was. And in 1973, after 11 seasons, 508 appearances, a First Division title, a League Cup, 2 Intercities Fairs Cups, and 37 caps for Wales. He wasn't always first choice sharing duties with Tony Millington through the decade, but he was always there when it mattered. He was sold. £100,000, a British record for a goalkeeper at the time, to Birmingham City. He made 16 league appearances before his back gave out still giving, even when the game was already turning away. No tribute, no farewell, no thanks. Just a transfer. Just a name off the books. He didn't leave because he was done. He left because they were done with him. Welsh journalist, 1973. And so Gary Sprake, the keeper who helped make Leeds matter, walked out the back door. And nobody followed. He could have stayed silent, could have played the role, could have smiled for the cameras, joined the reunions, and kept the secrets buried. But Gary Sprake wasn't that kind of man. In 1978, he gave an interview to the Daily Mirror and said what no one else had dared to say. That Don Revie, the godfather of Leeds United, had once offered him money to throw a match. It wasn't just a quote, it was a bomb, and it exploded everything. Revie denied it. The club went cold, and every former teammate went silent. Not one of them stood beside Gary. Not in public, not in private. There was no legal case, no charges, no way to prove or disprove what was said. But for Sprake, the trial was already over. I didn't fit the mold, so they erased me. Gary Sprake. After that, he wasn't a former player. He was an outsider, not welcome at Elland Road, not mentioned in the books, not invited back to the place he helped build. They didn't care if it was true, they just cared that he said it. After Birmingham, a back injury. The damage had started earlier with surgery as early as 1972, but it was a near-fatal blood clot in 1974 that ended the fight. He was just 30 years old, still sharp, still capable. But football was done with him, and he didn't fight it. He settled in Solihull, worked as a trainer, did sales, raised a family. There were no coaching jobs, no punditry offers, no handshakes on TV, because when you speak against the house, you don't get invited back inside. But even in silence, Gary Sprake didn't lie. In 2009, the Football Association of Wales honoured him for what he gave his country when he was still just a teenager. It wasn't much, but it was something, and it mattered. In 2013, he published his autobiography, Careless Hands. The title said everything. Not as an apology, but as a challenge. No bitterness, no gossip, just what happened, and what it cost. Most ignored it. Some mocked it. But those who read it saw a man still standing. Don Revie offered me money to throw a game. I refused, and I paid for it every day after. Gary Sprake, Careless Hands, 2013. He didn't chase legacy, he chased truth, and that's what made him dangerous. October 18th, 2016. Gary Sprake passed away. Age 71. Vascular illness. No headline, no statue, no stand renamed in his honor. The club he gave everything to offered a line on a website. No flowers on the pitch, no public tribute, no official remembrance at Elland Road. Leeds were in chaos that year under Massimo Cellino's disjointed regime, but even confusion doesn't excuse forgetting your foundation. There was a minute's applause before an EFL Cup match against Norwich. Short, respectful, but no flowers, no banner, and nothing permanent. They wore black armbands elsewhere, brief, polite, but nothing that matched the weight of what he gave. No reunion invite, no testimonial, no voice saying his name before the whistle blew. This was the man who played 508 times for Leeds United, who gave them their first League Cup, who stood behind them when no one else could. And when he was gone, Leeds United said less than strangers did. They should have brought him back, long before he left this world. Supporter, 2016. Football moved on. The records stayed. But the man behind them faded like he never existed. Even in death, they didn't forgive the truth. He wasn't a mascot, wasn't a media darling, wasn't one of the boys who smiled for the camera and played the game off the pitch. But when Leeds United needed saving, he was there. When they needed a goalkeeper to survive the second division, to win their first League Cup, to carry them to their first league title, he was the one in goal. They called others legends, built statues for men who gave less, wrote books about players who arrived after him. But Gary Sprake was there when it meant something, when they had nothing, and he delivered. He played 508 matches for Leeds United, won the 1968 League Cup, won the 1968-69 First Division title, won 2 Intercities Fairs Cups, earned 37 caps for Wales. He spoke what he believed was the truth, and it cost him everything. And for all of it, they gave him silence. He wasn't forgotten. He was removed. Football historian. This isn't a tribute. This is a correction. Because a slip doesn't erase a legacy, and one throw doesn't define a career. Gary Sprake stood for more than the moment they mocked. He stood for what football forgets too easily: bravery without reward, truth without protection, loyalty without applause. He didn't ask to be remembered. He just didn't expect to be buried. Subscribe not for nostalgia, but because some names weren't lost. They were erased, and now we bring them back.